Okay, this lesson is on neutralization reactions and titrations. And to be, let's see, the first lesson, when we were talking about properties of acids and bases, we said that they neutralize each other to form a salt and water, and we just left it at that. Now we're going to look at some reaction equations and see how the neutralization occurs. So here's an acid, that's nitric acid. You know it's an acid because it starts with H. Here's a base, that's sodium hydroxide. You know it's a base because it ends with OH. Acids start with H, bases end with OH. And when they neutralize each other, you get an ionic compound. Ionic compounds are also called salts, and that's why we say you get a salt and water. So if you can tell what's happening here, the hydrogen from the acid gets with the hydroxide from the base, and you get HOH, also known as H2O. There's your water. And then what's left? Well, you've got a cation sodium and an anion nitrate. So there's your salt, sodium nitrate. And I'm going to skip this stuff right here. We can just leave it at this. If you understand that, you're in pretty good shape. Acid plus base will give you a salt plus water. Next, we will look at titrations. So a titration is done to find the concentration of a solution. So you want to know the molarity of the, say, the acid or an unknown acid or unknown base. You want to know its molarity. You'll do what's called a titration. And let me show you a video of some of this, and I'll kind of walk you through this. They're setting up here to do a titration, and they've got in this titration, they're going to have an acid of unknown molarity down here in an Erlenmeyer flask. So that's the unknown. You know how much you have of it because you measure it. You'll usually use like 10 milliliters or 20 milliliters or whatever, but you'll measure it and know exactly how much you have. Okay, so you have a known volume, but you want to know the concentration. You want to know how many moles per liter. So you're going to do a titration to figure out how many moles of acid you have in there. And he's putting in an indicator. Now we'll talk about indicators in a minute. He's using phenolphthalein. Phenolphthalein is clear in an acid solution, but pink in base solutions. So that's why it's clear there. And then you fill up the burette with a base. So the acid was in the Erlenmeyer flask, and the base is here. And this one you know the concentration of. And you start releasing that base into the acid until the indicator changes color. And then you go and measure how much of that base you used, how much base it took to neutralize that acid. That's when the indicator will change color, when the acid and base have neutralized each other. This right here, they're showing that you could do the same thing with a pH meter. And when you do that, you can plot the pHs. So here's pH on this, and here's the volume of the base that was added. So at first you add a base, and remember it's an acid that's in the flask, so the pH is less than 7. Looks like it's the weak acid, so the pH is around 3 or so. And you're adding the base, and not much happens because all the base you add gets neutralized by this excess acid, and you're just getting salt water and some extra acid in there that hasn't been neutralized yet. So you keep doing that, and then when you get close to where the equivalence point, where the acid and base are neutralizing each other, the pH rises real fast because the base that you've added has just neutralized the final amount of acid in there, and now you're just adding, and you'll get your salt water, and now you're adding base to a saltwater solution, so the pH will be in the base range. So it's this point right here where the curve flips around. That's called an inflection point. That's the equivalence point where the acid and the base have neutralized each other. So back to here, equivalence point is where the acid and base have neutralized each other. It's that most vertical part of a titration curve. And so you're reacting in a titration, you react until you find that equivalence point. So let's look at some equivalence points for acid-base combinations. This first one here, we've got a strong acid and a strong base. And when that happens, you're going to get an equivalence point at a pH of 7. So you've got pH on this here and the volume of the acid added. These are opposite than this one. This one started as an acid and ended as a base. This one you've got an unknown base and you're adding acid to it. So you add acid to it and the pH doesn't change much at first until it's all that base is neutralized, and then boom, it becomes very acidic after you start adding acid to the saltwater solution. Anyway, when you have a strong acid and a strong base, the pH, or the equivalence point, which would be right there at a pH of 7. And that's just the way they work. Here's an example of a strong acid and a weak base. Strong acid, weak base. So you've got your weak base, so the pH is starting a little, it's not way up at 14, it's down here closer to 10. And you're adding some acid to it, not much happens, and then boom, you hit your equivalence point right about in there, but you can see it's below a pH of 7. And that's just that way that combination works. If you have a strong-weak combination, the strong one will tell you that the pH will be in that range at the equivalence point, because we're at a pH below 7, we're in the acid range. So if it's a strong acid, then the pH of the equivalence point will be in the acid range. It's below 7 somewhere. If you had a weak acid and strong base combination, that's this one. You've got your strong base, so your pH is way up here at 14. You're adding some acid, not much happens, and then boom, you get your equivalence point about right in there. And that's going to be a pH of greater than 7. So here's 7 down here. So the equivalence point's about right in there somewhere, maybe pH 9 to 10. So once again, the one that was stronger, the base was the stronger one, so your pH at the equivalence point ends up in the base range. There is another combination of weak acid, weak base, and usually we don't do titrations of them. The graph doesn't look very good. It doesn't help you determine the molarity of it. You have to find another way. But for these three combinations, that's how it works. Now, in this video here, back at some point, the indicator turned, there it is, it turned, the indicator changed color. That was the phenolphthalein in there that changed color to pink. So what you need to do is find an indicator that will change color at the same pH that your reaction is going to change. Your reaction is going to go to completion, or it's going to at the equivalence point. So here you've got an equivalence point of 7. You need an indicator that's going to change somewhere around there. Here you need an indicator that will change there, and here you need an indicator that will change somewhere up there. So when you're an indicator, they have different colors at different pH values. And here's a list of some common indicators that most labs have one or more of these. And they're telling you here where the indicator changes color. This one changes color from pH 6 to 7.6. This one's 5 to 8, etc. So that little range, that's called your transition range. That's the range that the indicator changes color. And the end point is where that indicator will change color. So I guess the endpoint's right in the middle there. So what you need to do is find and match. You need to match the indicator with the equivalence point. And so we're going to do that in this example here. We have a weak acid titrated against a strong base. What's a suitable indicator? So weak acid, strong base. We'll go back up here. We've got this combination, weak acid, strong base. The pH is going to be above 7. And really you're looking for the vertical part of the curve. If you can get something that changes color anywhere in that vertical part of the curve, which to me looks to be about a pH of 7 to 10, you're going to be okay, because the difference between here and here, that's one drop, and maybe sometimes even less. That's how fast that change will happen. So you're talking about a drop or half a drop from that burette. So anywhere in that 7 to 10 range will work. And so we will go down to our table here, and we want something, there's pH 7, so I'm just going to mark down there, and here's pH 10. I'm going to try to draw a straight line. It didn't work out so well, but there it is. And so anything that changes color in there will work. So will bromothymol work? It's maybe not the best one, because it's really going to start changing at around 6. So if that was the only thing you had, I'd maybe go for that. Litmus looks a little better. It's gonna, well, it's going to start changing around 5 to 8. Remember, it's really a drop that matters. So that one looks okay. If you have litmus, that could work. Methyl orange, it's going to change color way down here in the acid range. So that one isn't going to work for our example. Phenolphthalein, that's really your best one, I think. It's going to change color between 8 and 10, so it's firmly in that range. And the other thing it's got going for it is that it goes from colorless to red or pink, as you saw in the video. And that's easy to tell because, no color versus a color is much easier to tell than, say, yellow versus blue, because sometimes in here it's going to be a little green, and I've used that before, and it's a little confusing. You're like, well, is that, it's getting kind of green. Am I right at the equivalence point? Do I wait till it gets a little more blue? Whatever. This one's nice because it's either a color or it's not. So I would go for phenolphthalein on that one.